Houthi militia attacks on Mecca port is a war crime and a defiance of the international community and all human norms. Because of the Houthi rebels' attacks, thousands of families flee from Tuhaita to Al-Qulqa to seek shelter. Government forces take up fierce fighting with Houthis in Ma'rib and inflict heavy losses among them. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Shazab Dilbei. Houthi militia's attack on Mecca commercial port yesterday invoked local condemnation. According to the Joint Forces military media, the militia targeted the infrastructure of the port and targeted food aid storehouses. The port of Mecca is considered one of the oldest ports in the Arabian and the Gulf, with a strategic location near the international Strait of Bab el-Mandab. More on this story is within this report.
In a flagrant violation to all human norms, Houthi rebels targeted yesterday Al-Mekha port in the western coast of Yemen with rockets and drone attacks. The joint forces in a statement said that this new attack by Houthis targeted food aid storehouses in the port. These food supplies were intended to be distributed to poor families and displaced people in the west of the country. The Joint Forces spokesman Waddah Debesh added that the Houthi attack was conducted through launching 3 ballistic rockets that aimed at destroying the infrastructure of the port. The attack, according to the spokesman, included 6 drones and it took place minutes after an inspection visit by the delegation of Ministry of Transport to the port. Joint Forces air defenses shot down 2 of the drones, and the attack came in a time when a commercial ship was about to anchor. The inspection visit by the government delegation was meant to check operation of the port, which was reopened weeks ago as a civilian seaport to serve the Yemeni people amid the ongoing relentless war. Local sources recounted that the Houthi attacks were launched from Taiz Houthi-controlled areas. For its part, the Yemeni government denounced the Houthi attack on Al-Makha seaport. It said in a statement that the attack is a flagrant violation to all international and United Nations-led efforts for ending the war in Yemen. The attack, according to the statement, caused a huge destruction to the facilities in the port and the storehouses for food supplies. The Yemeni government reiterated that Al-Makha port was rehabilitated and was under test operation to receive commercial and humanitarian supplies to ease the sufferings of the Yemeni people. It added that this attack would have never been happened if Houthi militia was punished for their repeated attacks against Yemeni people in different parts of the country. The ministry said Al-Makha strikes come in a series of Houthi destruction of civilians' properties that aim to systematically destroy the national infrastructure of the country.
Hans Grunberg addressed the UN Security Council in his first briefing as a special envoy to Yemen. The Swedish diplomat address met with a Houthi attack on Mecca port that secures humanitarian aid to the people in Yemen. The following report reflects on the escalation of Houthi attacks in the region.
It is a message of war. The new escalation by Houthis in Yemen by hitting the civilian in Al-Makha seaport could be seen by many experts as new evidence that the rebels have no intention for peace. The attack on Al-Makha seaport comes hours after the new UN envoy presented his briefing on the conditions in the country to the Security Council. The political bureau of the Yemeni resistance affirmed that the Houthi attacks will never hold back the Yemenis' iron will, which confronts Houthi rebels in different parts of the country. The political bureau affirmed as well that there is no other option but to mobilize all fronts and to move on in order to free the capital Sana'a from Houthis. According to the resistance, the Houthi recent attack on Al-Makha is considered to be a message that those rebels refuse the efforts made for ending the war, and they will continue their terrorist crimes in the land and the sea, excusing no one. Houthis are steering an alarming escalation of tension recently in Yemen and Saudi Arabia. During the last couple of days, they targeted with ballistic missiles and drones Al-Anad air base in Lahaj to the south of Yemen. The attack on Al-Anad air base killed and wounded tens of soldiers. Also recently, Houthi used ballistic missiles in Damar, and they upward their military campaign to seize Ma'rib. The last episode of Houthi attacks came on Al-Makha seaport, and it ironically came in the same day in which the US remembers the historical attacks of terrorism in 9/11 that happened 20 years ago. The questions are rising. What would be the consequences of these repeated Houthi attacks on Yemen and on the region? What is the possible response of the international community towards this escalation from the part of the Iran-backed Houthis? What will the world powers do to ease the suffering in Yemen and to curb the defiant and unbridled wildness of Houthis and their Iranian patrons? And the call now returns back to the government forces to keep its commitment to restore Yemen from the hands of the rebels.
Employees in Al-Makha port were affected by the outrageous Houthi attack on the port. They stopped working fearing another attack that could cost them their lives.
We came to work in the port, but the Houthi militia bombed the port, destroying the infrastructure and disrupted our work.
We came here to work, and while we were transporting goods, we were surprised by drones hitting the port, and now the work has totally stopped.
The workers and I were transporting oil goods as the port was targeted by the drones. The infrastructure was destroyed and now stopped working out of fear.
2 weeks passed since the reopening of the port, as if the militia learned about the port reopening and they targeted it with several drones, which caused the work to stop.
In Hodeidah, Houthi militias heavily shelling forced residents of Al-Tuhaita to flee from their homes. Local sources said that the militia targeted civilians with intensive shelling that forced them to flee, and their houses were used by the rebels as military barracks. Video footage showed a number of families were fled from homes to Al-Khoukha after the Houthis targeted populated areas and farms. Still in Al-Tuhaita, 6 Houthi members were killed and others wounded in clashes with the joint forces. A military source confirmed that Houthi rebels tried to penetrate the Faza front in Tuhaita, where they were confronted with heavy resistance from the joint forces, and the remaining Houthis were forced to flee. In Hais, to the south of Hodeidah, Houthis were inflicted with heavy losses during the past hours by joint forces fires after the latter spotted their movements and deployments to the west of the city. The joint forces destroyed a Houthi artillery launching a pad and a B-launcher car. To Ma'rib, fierce fighting has taken place between the government forces and Houthi militia. The fighting raged on the fronts in the western part of the city. A military source stated that the government forces and the popular resistance repelled a series of attacks on the positions of Houthi militia in Al-Qassara front. According to the source, Houthi militia tried to advance and break through the lines of the government forces, adding that the rebels received heavy losses in lives and equipment. At the same time, coalition jets targeted Houthi sites and reinforcements, inflicting heavy losses on them. 2 civilians were killed and injured in Houthi mine explosion in Al Jawf. A local source said that the Houthi militia had planted thousands of mines in roads, agriculture lands and populated areas, which caused disruption in people's lives. Since the beginning of the year 2021, dozens of innocent people have been killed and injured by Houthi mines and bombs. Most of them are children and women. Local and international human rights organizations estimated the number of mines planted by the Houthi militia in various governorates is more than 2 million. Masan Project stated that it has dismantled a number of 1,184 mines, unexploded devices, and explosive devices during the second week of September. The project said in a statement that the field teams had removed more than 2,600 mines and unexploded devices since the beginning of the month. The number of mines and explosive devices that the program has cleared since it started increased to more than 273,000. Coming next, Houthi rebels kidnap the future of Yemeni children.
ثالثتي على منطقة الروضة استهدف الأطفال الأبرياء اللي يلعبوا في الشارع يدعي للسلام يقولوا للسلام يقتل أطفالنا يقاتل أطفالنا الأبرياء.
أنا قلت افتجعت ولا قلنا يقع واحد صاروخ ثاني طلعت البيت حقنا كاس أنا ألعب أنا وأصحابي والصاروخ الطرح.
Welcome back. The war has overshadowed all aspects of life in Yemen. Children in Yemen are the most vulnerable fraction and have been hit severely by this mad war. This report sheds light on the situation of children amidst constant Houthi violations.
A simple scene summarizing the bitter reality of Yemen being kidnapped by the Irani-backed militia is just by looking at children. Yes, children of Yemen are the future of Yemen, and since the Irani-backed militia has recruited children on the battlefields and thrown them as war fuel and as human shields, they are gradually losing the way to the future. Thus, the conscience disappeared, the vision disappeared, and the future died in the eyes of the children of Yemen. The Houthi militia target students to recruit them and tamper with their ideas. Militias made more than 300 modifications to school curriculum and included in the curriculum lessons to sanctify Houthi leaders and urge students to fight with them. They also opened offices in institutions to register the names of students to push them to fight. Months after joining the summer centers organized by the Houthis in Yemen, a 15-year-old Samir told his family that he would join the battlefronts, despite his parents' refusal to finally receive him as a dead body at a time when recruitment campaigns continue, which doesn't exclude accusations of involvement in any of the parties to the conflict. Samir's father, who preferred not to reveal his identity, explained that the beginning was with his family's approval for his son to join the summer centers during the annual school holiday, to learn religious lessons and other courses and activities that attract the attention of boys, and upon returning to his family, the impact of the concepts and lessons he received is clear in his behavior, up to expressing his desire to join the front for jihad for the sake of God and defense of the homeland. Although Samir's mother and father initially refused to enlist him, with the passage of time, his poor family's anxiety subsided, as he would return to them every few months and provide them with money that helps them provide some household needs. This situation did not last long, as the last time he returned to his family dead, and with his body a picture in a frame with his name written as a martyr, to be hung by his family on the walls of the house. Samir's case is not much different in its details from what was witnessed in one of the neighborhoods near his family's residence in Sana'a, where the 3 dead residents of the neighborhood, aged between 15 and 16 years, Ahmed, Yusuf and Muhammad, were buried. They joined the fronts more than a year ago, and after that they were returning intermittently to their families. The 3 later died in a site believed to have been directly bombed and returned in small coffins to be buried in a sad atmosphere by the residents of the neighborhood. Those innocent children who were supposed to be playing or studying at school like many others at their same age, now they find themselves out of school with no future. Their innocence has been kidnapped from them, and instead of holding their bags or a ball to play with, they find themselves holding weapons instead and fighting their own friends and neighbors. And most of all, coming back to their families in coffins. What a crime! The picture must be clear and repeated until the Yemeni chooses between a prosperous future and remaining as a game in the hands of a gang that has provided Yemen with nothing but destruction, ruin, and employment of the Persians.
In Abyan, people complain about piles of waste and the spread of mosquitoes and diseases. The filthy streets of the city reveal the local authorities' failure to deal with this issue. More details are within this report.
During the last month, people of the southern cities have been suffering due to constant power cuts, the spread of the 3rd wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, and do not forget the extreme heat that hits the coastal areas. In Zanzibar, complaints increased about the spread of mosquitoes from swarms that transmit disease and epidemics. This is due to the pile-up of waste in the streets and residential areas. Big piles of trash, restaurant waste, etc. are dumped in streets, markets, public areas, and in front of homes. Local authorities are doing nothing, despite waste piling up and the rise of infection rate. Local residents demanded an immediate response to provide bins and move them daily from the streets to designated places outside the city and destroy them by appropriate sanitary methods. A medical source reported that the pile-up of these wastes increase environmental and health concerns, especially with the impact of the 3rd wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the medical source, rapid and urgent treatment of these wastes, also corpses of animals such as sheep and dogs, is required. This have become an environment for the reproduction and spread of mosquitoes from swarms, he added. The medical source called on local authorities to carry out disinfection campaigns using fog and mist spraying techniques to combat mosquitoes spread and reduce risks of infections. Health facilities must be provided with necessary equipment and medicines to confront the resulting epidemics. Abyan is not the sole city in the country that suffers from waste pilings, as many other cities have the same problem.
The National Committee Against Coronavirus announced 56 new cases of COVID-19 in 7 governorates. Committee officials said on Twitter that 17 cases were recorded in Hadramaut, 15 in Ma'rib, 11 in Adan, 6 in Al-Bayda, 3 in Taz, 3 in Shabwa, and 1 in Al-Dala. Also 15 deaths were recorded, plus 35 recovered cases. With the current updates, the total confirmed cases are 8,414, including 1,584 deaths and 5,244 cases of recovery. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. Houthi militia attacks on Makka port is a war crime and a defiance of the international community and all human norms. Because of the rebels' attacks, thousands of families flee from Tuhaita to Al-Khoukhah to seek shelter. Government forces take up fierce fighting with Houthis in Ma'rib and inflict heavy losses among them. This is the end of the news. Thank you for watching.